can marry so many different options in there. Hello everybody and welcome to the Quilter's Apothecary. Today we're going to be doing a tutorial in our border series tutorials. And for this particular border series tutorial, which I've been doing for over a decade, but I've decided finally it's time to share this one with you. You're going to need for the draw out section, because we're going to be first drawing it out and then we're going to be heading over to the machine and we're going to be quilting it out. So for the draw out, you need to have a straight ruler that has a 45 degree. And then also, you're going to need some sort of circles. Now, if you don't have our circle set, and this is an abridged version, it actually comes up to 12 inches on our regular version that we have on our site to purchase. And again, I do want to add real quick, these are for drawing, designing, and also marking on the quilts. Anything, even the 1/4 inch inside circles like this, the nesteds, I never suggest to anybody that you're going to use these at the machine. These are specifically for marking on the quilt, or they're going to be for drawing. So that being said, we're going to be using these to do our drawings, and then we're going to be using our solid circles to actually go to the machine and quilt this out. Now when I draw this out, I'm going to show you one version of this, and then I'm going to show you a little bit different version of this when we get to the machine. So let's head down to our paper, and then we're going to draw this out and then head to the machine. Okay, so now as you can see here we have a border, and this particular border is on poster board. And it is a 4-inch border. I've done this in as wide as a 10-inch border. So just so you know, it's completely versatile. The other thing I've done is once I've shown this to you, I've actually created a border inside of a border, which gives a really wonderful high-end effect. So let's start with the basics. The basics are very simply this. Before you would load the quilt, you'd know that you were doing this particular border. And for this version, which is going to be different than the one we quilt out at the machine just a little bit, so you can see how to do two different versions, the one thing you do for either version is you fold all 4 sides and locate the center of your border. So on your top, on your bottom, and on both sides, you will have located the middle of your border. So I'm going to start. I'm going to use my ruler. I'm going to line that up. Give myself a line so that I know that that's the center of my border. I am going to start with a miter. Now if it's an oddball border where the top border is a little bit wider than the side border, then I would err to my 45 degree here and make sure that your miter is going to be a 45 degree. So I'm going to go with my 45, line that up, and then very simply I'm going to turn that again. I'm going to reline that up, get my next 45 degree angle, and notice what I'm doing here. My 45 degree is right on the seam of my quilt. Now, the other thing I do want to add is that when I am actually marking this part off, just like I've done on this poster board, I would have marked in with chalk if it were in a dark border, and usually I'm using the white chalk, the Bowen, which you'll see me use at the machine. Or if it were a white border, I would be using the blue Marks Be Gone, but I would still go in a 1/4 inch so that way when I put stuff in, I'm not going to be cutting off part of the design with my binding. So I'm going to line that up. Now what I'm doing is I'm working from one corner into the middle. So my poster board is small. It's like a tiny baby quilt. So I have a couple options now. When I put this here and line up my 45 degree, I could go ahead and do one here, which would give me a middle with a very small triangle. But what I prefer to do when I'm getting close to the center and there's not that much room here is I'm just going to use my ruler and I'm going to make my oddball triangle in the middle a little bit wider, which is going to kind of stylize that. Now, obviously, if this were a full size, twin size, queen size, I would have a lot of 45, 45, 45, 45, 45 until I get to the oddball in the middle. We don't want to work from one corner all the way to the end because then your oddball is going to be at the end. It's going to look like a mistake. When you work from each corner and you work your way into the middle, it looks like a planned design element. So I'm going to line that up. Got that. Now I'm going to flip over to the other side and I'm going to start there. Same thing. I'm going to use my 45. I'm going to line that up, and it just so happens I know that that 45 is going to be perfect there because it is a 4-inch border all the way around. Turn it again. Line up my 45 degrees heading in toward the center, right on the seam, right here. And again, do not forget your 1/4 inch in, so you're not cutting off part of your design. And now I'm going to turn it, and again, if I were using my 45 degree, I would end up here, short, just like we did over here because it's equal distance. But instead, when I'm getting to the middle, I'm going to make a nice large triangle there in the middle. And it's going to depend on the size of the border, what size of triangle you end up with there in the center. But again, I tend to like bigger rather than smaller. Too small, like the one that we would have had, would have been too small. So now I have that part done. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work my way down the side. So I'm going to line this up. And again, what I'm lining up as I work my way down within my throat space of the machine, I line up my 45 degree here. You can see that. And of course, that matches with this 45 degree. I'm going to go this way, turn it, and again, I'm going to line up my 45 degree here. Let's line that up right on that seam going down, and then I just slide forward until it hits this line here, 45 degree. Let me slide this up here so you can get a visual of what I'm doing. Now I'm going to come down. I'm going to repeat the same thing, coming down the side, and again, I would be working within the throat space of my machine. Another 45 degree coming from here to here, lining that 45 degree up here. Now, on my poster board, I went up 1/4 inch and I put a line here to signify this is where the middle of my side border would be. So if I were to do my 45 degree to here, and I'm going to do that just real light. What's going to happen is then when I take this line to go up to here, like that, you can see how small that middle triangle is going to be. And you know, I could play with that and do something really neat there, but I really prefer on this particular border to go ahead and let me get rid of this line. Extend that out so that it's a bigger triangle. So again, I'm going to not use my 45. I'm just going to go from this tip to the center line. And here's the thing to know. Depending, whoops, my thread broke. Let me see, line that up. There we go, just like that. And let me get rid of this line now. So just so you know, some extra information here. On both of these, you see that when I started with the miter, 45, and then oddball, because it's such a small space here. If I would have had a queen or king, I would have had a lot, like I said earlier. But I won't always end up with my center triangle facing down. Sometimes, depending on the size of the quilt, the triangle is going to be facing up. It does not matter. That has nothing to do with anything. It ends where it ends in the middle. Sometimes the triangle is going to be dipping down, pointing down, and sometimes that triangle is going to be pointing up. And the design is going to look beautiful both ways. Okay, so now I'm going to come down this side. And again, I'm lining up my 45-degree right on the seam here. And I am marking in pencil on paper. I always like to start with that. Now, obviously, what I'm marking right here, this is going to be part of my portfolio. I have hundreds of my designs drawn out on paper and poster board so that I can look through and share with folks. And so I always like to do my first good one in pencil, and then I simply would go over it again with marker. So again, I'm coming down the side, I'm going to slide that, and because here we're reaching our corner, now we do a straight line from the tip down to the center or the marked center of that border. So again, our oddball, because it's going to be mirrored, the oddball is going to be in the middle of the side border coming up. Okay, so there we have our base for the border treatment itself. The next step is going to be, we're going to take our straight ruler and I'm going to line it up, and where I'm lining it up is right across the seam, and I'm taking this right up to the tip, because what I want to do is to divide each of these triangles in half. So there, that's divided in half. On the side here, I'm going to repeat that same process, line that up. That's divided in half. Come down the side, line up my straight line right on that seam. Sorry about that. Line this up. Line that up, and again, I'm using my body border seam, because even if the quilt is crooked, I want to err to the body of the quilt so that the eye will make it look right, even if the quilt border is crooked. I get a lot of odd-shaped pieces coming in from clients, and it's my job to try to make them look as good as I possibly can. Including my own quilts. Okay, so we're going to repeat that same thing down the side. Line that up, come up. And because I'm an occasional perfectionist, I'm going to fix that because my ruler slipped a little bit. Line that up. There we go. Ta-da. All right, so now we have that part done. So now we have all of our divisions, and what I've done is I've created from corner in triangles. These are going to be guidelines for us. What I'm going to do next with this particular border is, now that I've created this main space and separated outer triangles from the inner triangles, now I want to create some negative space between the two, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go outside each of those lines. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do on paper, I think I'm going to do let me look and see here. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch on paper. When we get over to the quilt, I think I'll do a 1/2 inch because I want to do a wider border for you on the quilt itself. And so what I'm doing is I'm lining up a 1/4 inch here. I'm going to go up to that center line, stop, because now I know where to pivot, line up, 1/4 inch, creating my negative space, come down the side. So all of my inner triangles are getting a 1/4 inch echo. Up, stop, come down, line it up, down, stop, pivot, up, pivot. Now, I do like to pre-mark before I start quilting. It takes me 5 minutes to actually mark this out when I'm not talking my way through it at the machine. And then very simply, I grab my ditch ruler and I quilt it out. But some of you will just, if you choose, you can just use your ditch ruler once you get these registration lines in place, and you could just go ahead and quilt it. I just like to go ahead and mark it. I'm a big fan of pre-marking. That way when I look at it, I can see and say, I'd like it better if I did this, this, or this. And you can really see when you pre-mark a little bit. I didn't used to take that time. I would just throw on a quilt and start going away at it. But now I found that just taking that, adding that extra hour for doing a whole custom quilt for each different area to kind of pre-mark a little bit and audition, it just saves me a little bit of disappointment down the road. Okay, and since I'm over on this side, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to do my 1/4 inch on the outer triangles. Go in, and again I'm going to go to a 1/4 inch, and I love having the center line when I put that in there. Now we're going to use this as well for the next step, but right now I'm using it because I know now where to stop and pivot and turn my ruler. I don't have to guess and overshoot on every center or every peak of each of the triangles. Go up. Again, 1/4 inch. And what I'm doing right now again is I'm creating this wonderful negative space to separate this border and give this beautiful high-end look. I like to use this particular designs with a lot of, if I have a quilter that I know is more linear than traditional, i.e. feathers are not really their gig, or it's a quilt that I know would look a lot better with something a little more dynamic and non-traditional. I like to use this one. Now, oops, I'm going to slide down there. Sorry about that. Okay. Again, we're just repeating this all the way across. that down. Okay, so now I have all of my divisions done. I gotta get a big brush for this when I'm showing you things. Okay, so now the next thing I would do once I get this marked, like this on the quilt, is I would go ahead and quilt this. So I would use my ditch ruler, and I would start here, and I would go up, and of course typically I'm going to want to pop this myself. You don't have to, but I like to go the 1, 2, 3, stop, 1, 2, 3, right on the same line, travel in my 1/4 inch line, and I tend to go in a little bit further than the 1/4 inch because I know the binding's going to cover that up. Travel to the next line, 1, 2, 3, and then back, and then 1, 2, 3, continue on, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to thicken all 3 of these lines on this whole border, and that's going to give me the start of my design.